Well, good evening. So a friend from social media, from my Facebook Sawyer Heaven's Gate Facebook page, uh, um, sent me a little YouTube video about the four comets. Before that, I knew of two of them, but I didn't know that there was a second Atlas and a Pan-STARRS comet. And the Pan-STARRS comet is, I don't know where Atlas is observed from, actually. But Pan-STARRS is the observatory in Hawaii. Maybe the same one that saw the Hale-Bopp and the companion object that they tried to explain away as a star in the background. But the Japanese actually showed in their picture, which I'll go to describe right now, actually, since I'm talking about it, before I get into other things. See this picture? In the top left is the older member picture that Tiendo said what an older member might look like, or what the Chief of Chiefs might look like in one of his vehicles, or because when you get to be that experienced, you can have more than one vehicle. That's what Doe said, that T could have more than one vehicle, and she didn't need all her mind to come do this task here. Anyway, so the picture beneath that older member picture, or drawing, airbrushed by Hal Odie, there's a picture of the Hale-Bopp comet, the biggest, brightest object in the middle there, and am I still going? Yeah, I am, I guess. Hi, Busa, salutations. And Matthew Bittencourt, can we get aboard the spacecraft? It's not easy to get on board the spacecraft. But the way that we can approach it is by asking T&O to help get you there. That's the truth. That's what it takes. And then watch for the way that they help you. Make choices that will go in that direction. And of course, that would be to understand everything they talked about. Not understand it, to actually believe that they are who they said they were, and that they came from the kingdom that created the planet and all its inhabitants. And that the task is that we have to do to show them that we want that world is to stand up for T&O, stand for T&O, and maintain that stand until we leave our vehicles, however that happens. And they weren't defining how that happens, but they gave us some ideas that some of us might be taken out by somebody who doesn't like what we're talking about, for whatever reason. Some of us might be taken out by disease, some by an accident. I'm talking about us, not that Doe talked about the ones that were left behind, how they were going to leave, but he talked about that as the ways that they might leave. They didn't know whether, before they actually made their choice to go full with the program of drinking that strong barbiturate mixture with some alcohol in it and some pudding, or what was it? The other thing that was in some of them. applesauce, they talked about how all the different ways they could leave, and that he could leave first, and he even provided for some understanding in case he did leave first, or if T decided that some of them were going to be taken with their vehicles, and some were not, so they made sure that they had money on them, a little bit to make a phone call or whatever, so to not be a vagrant. Let's say they were, whatever. It didn't matter. I mean, it's not like, if Doe thought that the instruction would have been to leave them with $1,000 each, then he would have tried to do that. But I think the way instructions come, it's like the older member is also expecting the younger member to. I'm doing a live stream. Knows that the younger member is going to pull on the answers. That's what they taught right in the very beginning in 1975, that we needed to learn how to pull on their mind. Pull it in to our vehicles. And T would always say, get your mind in your vehicle. Get your mind in your vehicle. Because what we are is where the spirits or the souls that have mind in them from the next level, or the spirits that have the mind of the misinformation mind of the human kingdom. That's what we are. Now, so we're a mixture of those things. And so the object is to get rid of all the mind from the human kingdom and then fill up the pocket or the balloon with the mind from the next level. And that means adopting everything about them. I mean, without, you don't have to copy their hairdos. Doe even told us that, because when he got his head shaved, I was in the classroom. And Jim Odie asked him a question in the because we all knew that T had asked us, well, not asked us, T had instructed us to make our commitment to Doe. Very clear about that. We had a big lesson about it, and was talked about many meetings in a row. You can hear some of them, probably all of them, in the audio tapes that we do have. And so getting back to pulling, that's what we have to do now if we want to be included in that program that will get us aboard that spacecraft. Getting a ride on a spacecraft is nothing. Well, I'm not going to say it's nothing. It depends on what kind of spacecraft it is. It can end up being a spacecraft from the lower forces, from the space aliens, and that would be a bummer. And if we are approached by a spacecraft, then that's the reason to get to know T and Doe's mind. Because the more we get to know T and Doe's mind, the more we'll be able to identify that it's T and Doe in the spacecraft. Or contrary to that, actually, more likely would occur would be that you would not recognize that as T and Doe's spacecraft, because you would get a vibe from it. That there would be something that, like T and Doe would say, that if in doubt, don't. That was one of their rules. They also had a rule that was take a chance on a positive. So you didn't always know what to do. I mean, actually what Doe said was that what really happens is that we end up ruling out a lot of things. And we always have the choice to rule out T&O as being getting off the mountain. Excuse me. I don't know if an influence came into my vehicle. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case. When I say I don't know, I really mean it. So, T&O would refer to the spacecraft as a bus, but that to meet the bus on the schedule was very important. And Doe said that the gate wasn't closed. So there is still a boarding pass to get on the bus. Now, what bus we're going to get on, or where the bus is going to take us, can it go to where T&O are? Yes. Because they said that literally the spacecraft that they're on, not just in the keeping of I think that anybody that's even saved because they believe in T&O and so they know who their older member is, they recognize T&O. I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe they will get to meet them on board a spacecraft. And I suspect that they'll be given a physical body, but I might be wrong about that too. Or I might be wrong about one and not the other. But, and to get in that place, because T&O taught that there's unlimited, the growth is not held back in the next level. It's not like the human kingdom to where you have to spend so much time on this grade and this lesson program, and before you can move to the next one. You can't really skip grades unless you're really, you can. They do skip grades, but the grades in school in the next level have to do with getting out of the human kingdom. So in other words, like let's say we come into the human life and we think, I want to make $1 million. Okay, now it's probably $1 billion that somebody dreams of. Okay, now the next level has no need for human money. And you can learn all the lessons, you can learn a lot of lessons without having any money. You can learn lessons in love and friendship and in conflict resolution and anger management and sensuality and attachments to loved ones and responsibilities and loss of having responsibilities, because we can measure ourselves by the responsibilities that we have. And, and it's all, there's nothing wrong with, our hating ourselves, being depressed, feeling like we failed this person or that person or failed ourselves, our highest ideals, and we were worthless, and we were addicted to this and that and substances or whatnot, and we were worth nothing, and so we might as well, do whatever, and if, it might end up being suicide but I don't care. That's an attitude. Those are all lesson opportunities. Those aren't reasons to lay the body down. You're not really laying the body down. You're forcing it down. Which, I mean, they were doing that too, by giving, they were, otherwise they wouldn't have taken, I mean, well, Doe felt like he had the opportunity to lay his vehicle down in about 1987, I think. Yeah, or 6 or 7. But I think it was more like, yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. When he got Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and he was living in a house at White Feather Lake. I think that was the name of it, up in northern Colorado. Northern mid longitude, Colorado. White Feather Lakes, I think it was. And north of Poudre Canyon. Northwest of Fort Collins. Anyway, and he had a house there with, and helpers were living with him. And that was Livodi and Janodi. But sometimes he had individuals from one of the crafts. We had 2 crafts. We called them crafts. Well, they were just houses. They were decorated to look like a normal house so that if a workman came in it, they wouldn't, or the realtor made a spot visit for some reason, they wouldn't see anything that would give them any indication that there was a cult living there. 20 people or 30 people or 40 people in some circumstances. But anyway, so he would ask for notes, and because that's how we communicated with him directly. Unless there was an emergency of some sort, and then we could telephone him. But and so sometimes helpers would come and they would deliver, pick up messages and go back. But sometimes he would have students do it, and one time he had Sorority and I do it. So we drove up there from Boulder, where we were living, up Boulder Canyon on Lost Angel Road. And in this place that overlooked the entire valley, beautiful deck, and it was above a gold mine, of all places. I mean, talk about different fulfillments of prophecy in little remote kind of ways. Lost Angel Road, on a gold mine. And Doe had his quarters, which was a garage, when he was living with us in that location, above the gold mine. But it was a garage beneath him. Which was a big hole in the ground. I don't know if it was filled in. I don't know what kind of a door there was over it. I didn't ever see it actually look at it. I don't know how big the opening was. I don't know if they had a basement to where, you could go into it from there. I wouldn't kind of want that, right? Having a hole that goes, who knows how far it goes underneath your house. But I wonder if he had a problem with bats at one point. I don't think so. But yeah, some rodents he had in his attic that some of the classmates worked to get rid of. Raccoons, I think it was. Anyway, so So White Feather Lakes, that boulder spacecraft, a lot of things happened there. That's where Mark and Sarah were asked to leave, were instructed to leave unless they wanted to live by the lesson plan that was called I Could Be Wrong. We're all dropouts that left because we failed in our task, in completing our task. Not one of us is better than the other one because of the thing that broke the camel's back, the poor camel's back. For, I shouldn't make sarcasm about that because it is a serious thing. I shouldn't take it lightly. I shouldn't express it lightly. But it doesn't mean it's the end of us. And so I guess I've grown accustomed to it, and that's another booger that I have to conquer. Getting lackadaisical, having lethargy. So anyway, but I'm going to get back to White Feather Lake and what I was talking about, but which had to do with him getting Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and when we got up there, he came out in his robe, like a bathrobe. It wasn't over his head. There was no hood on it or anything. We had robes one time before that while T was still in our vehicle. So T introduced that, if you want to think about it that way. And T instigated all the big things, well, except for their method of departure. But even, I believe, introduced that. But I don't want to go into that right now, because I have before, many times. But so he came out, and he was pleasant. He didn't, he looked tired. He looked tired, I think. But I didn't know how to. I mean, he was my older member, and so I didn't read him. I didn't. I was always in awe about him, even though I let that slip. Not that he was requiring me to be in awe of him, because he didn't wear it on his sleeve. You wouldn't feel that necessarily when you were in the world with him, because that was part of their job, to be undercover. And so that only the ones that they gave the vehicles that little smelling salt to would recognize it. And the smelling salts were given in the form of a soul coming back, simultaneous, that was working with the vehicle since birth, and then getting real close when it was time to meet T and Do, or meet their information, however it happened. And that would stimulate the memory of that information as being trustworthy, because it comes with that. That's what people call faith. Well, faith is the evidence of things unseen. That was one of the things, one of the few things maybe, I don't know, that Paul said, that Doe felt was accurate, because he had me say it to him, read that part, or I memorized it, so I could just say it to him in the Beyond Human series, session 1, I believe it was, or maybe it was 2, that what is faith? Faith is the evidence of things unseen. It's evidence. And so what he told us was that he felt like he could, I'm not sure if he said it No, what happened was he came to a meeting, gave a meeting to us a little bit after that. I don't know if it was days or weeks. And he told us that he had been sick and didn't want to stay here anymore, wanted to leave. And so he said he was curled up in his bunk and he was asking his older member if he could leave. And he said that he could leave if he wanted to. And that he decided that he wanted to finish his task because he didn't know what would happen to us if he left. In a sense, that was the same response. That was a similar response to what Jesus had in reverse, where he said, "Do I have to leave?" Right? He said, "Even though I know this, the reason I came was to demonstrate the truth, and then leave by laying down my life, by letting the humans take my life from me, take my vehicle's life from me. Not really take my life from me, because his life couldn't be taken away by the humans, because his life is a soul. And souls can't be created by humans or space aliens. And human equivalent space aliens, that's what they call space aliens. And they can't be created or they can't be killed. Because the next level has control over their garden. Because the garden was designed to be a school, an astronaut training program, Tiendo called it at one point. A God astronaut training program, where God was a member of the next level. God in the Greek, or that's used in the New Testament, is deities. It's plural. It can be singular or plural. And that means any member that's a member of the next level is a God to a human. And Jesus talked about that in terms of saying that the greatest human was John the Baptist, but even the least in the kingdom of heaven was greater than John. And greater isn't a little bit greater. Greater is a lot greater, because they're now in the next level environment. They have the proof. And they have a new vehicle. That's a dense physical vehicle. And their soul has grown strong enough to be able to pilot that vehicle. Because those vehicles are grown, they're grown on a vine like a plant, and they're not made out of flesh. They've got a different type of physical material. I'm not sure if he said that it was related to a plant material. I don't remember that. There's something about me, something that I do remember about that, but I don't know where I got it from exactly. So I'm not going to say that that came from Doe's mind. I can't prove it and I can't remember it clearly. Prove it by the writings and the audio tapes and the videotapes. Because I believe, I was recently said that I was cocky. And I even said that with a little bit of a cockiness, I think. Because I do feel that I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And I know where to go to find out what I know. Now, I didn't come up with those words. That was T and Doe's words. I know what I know. They said that they knew what they knew, and they knew what they didn't know, and they individually said this. And they knew where to go to find out what they didn't know about. And I've seen so much evidence of that. Now, So I know what I know is from T and Do's mind, but also the experiences that I've had that show me how everything that Jesus taught was from their mind in the four Gospels, because they said that. And so we can count on what Jesus said in the four Gospels as being accurate. Now, his interpretation of it and the translation of it is not 100%, because there were a lot of different words that you can put on things. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I wanted to talk about the four comets as well, a little bit, and related to maybe the four horns in the book of Revelation, because Doe said that everything in the book of Revelations was not to be counted on. That John didn't get it all, wasn't able to get it all accurately. And he used the example of the 1,000 years not being in the right place in the order of things in that material. But he did talk about that there might be a new crop of Luciferians if this garden was going to be used as a future garden. But there might be a base for the next level first. And they would call it, like they called it in 75, T and Doe together came up with that. So Doe didn't make that up. He got it from T and Doe together. I shouldn't say he got it from T, because they were receiving information at the same time, the same information. They were working together as partners. Even though Doe knew that T was his older member. But he learned that, not because T told him that. See, he was a witness to T, and T was the witness to him being the one that the students needed to make their commitment to. The one that came back that had been in the task of Jesus and Elijah and Moses and Enoch and Adam, which it says in UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. So, if I'm breaking up too much in my audio, let me know. I could turn it down a little bit, because I've got this new microphone and I'm not sure how to use it the best way yet. I've got 2 filters on it. Okay, so I was just spacing out, thinking about something else when I should put my mind on what I'm doing now. But let me go to the chat room. Well, let me finish the one thing I was saying there, that those 4 comets might be what's talked about in Revelation chapter 9 as the 4 horns. Let me complete that thought before I go to the chat room. Let's see, how do I do that? Okay, there it goes. I always miss it. But let me put this up first. Oh no, it's Revelation 9:13. So I'll put that down. I'll put this up. Revelation 9:13. Okay, and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Make sure we're still ticking away here. We seem to be. And you can still hear me. I remember one time I didn't realize I had my mic off for maybe half an hour, maybe more than that. That was trying individuals, I'm sure. So anyway, Revelation 9:13, and the sixth angel sounded, and now there can be a lot of time in between that, and I heard a voice from four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Okay, so God means deity, theos, a deity, and altar is where the sacrifice takes place, and we're actually all sacrificing our human lives when we want to make application to go to the next level. Because when the older members come back, depending on how much we grew now, determines how much we're going to have to grow then. If we don't graduate during this incarnation. And so so the altar is where they deposited their vehicles that they brought with them from the next level spacecraft, that were physical vehicles that were deposited, well, not deposited, but were released by laying them down, throwing them down. Actually, that's the way it says in Revelation 4 or 5. I forget exactly. And it also talks about that in Revelation chapter 7, I believe, that those are the same individuals, the four living beings and the living mammal beings, and also said as beast, but using the wrong word, because the beast is also used to be therion, which is a poisonous mammal, like a human equivalent that has the misinformation mind. So is the lower forces, the Luciferian, Space Alien, Fallen Angel souls with those human vehicles, or the hybrid human vehicles that they make, and they grow on board spacecrafts or in underground facilities, or on Earth, above ground facility, whatever the case may be, through the humans that they use as puppets and as the raw materials even for their They may take a whole bunch of humans. I think Doe mentioned this, and I forgot where, though. But I believe it's in the Beyond Human series. Maybe it's 11, session 11, where I believe he talks about how that there could be a new crop of, he might have said that in session 4, a new crop of Luciferians, and yeah, he didn't talk about that. I can remember how many, that any human vehicles would be left. But in something Jesus said, I believe that possibility exists. He said the righteous would be left to shine. And I suspect that would be the what Jesus said, with the meek that shall inherit the earth. After the spading happens, which it gets rid of all the weeds and anybody that sided with the weeds. And they're sorted to whatever they get what they believed in. They get accelerated to that when they lose their vehicles. So loss of our vehicles is an acceleration to our next grade in school. So in a sense, but that doesn't mean I don't look forward to it myself. And maybe that's a shortcoming that I have, because T and Doe were looking forward to leaving for a long time. So I don't have as much mind as they had in my vehicle, or I would feel that same way. But they weren't willing to do it before they completed their task. They didn't want to shorten their task. No, they didn't want to short their task. They wanted to give the opportunity so that students could spend as much time as possible in the human kingdom in their vehicles learning lessons. Because even them, those 38, some of them were going to need to come back, but they had learned their lessons enough to where the next level decided that they were committed to wanting to grow, and wanted to be putty in their hands and recognize T and Doe and fell in love with T and Doe or Doe, but knowing Doe and listening to the tapes of T, they saw that it was the same mind, and so they could have fell in love with, and love meaning a platonic love, but even loving their vehicles was part of it. That's why it was, even though they didn't have any sensuality. The closest they got to sensuality was an occasional hug. If like a student was gone for a while and they were doing a difficult task, when they came back, we were approved to give hugs. We did that when they sent us back to visit with our families in 1985 and 1987, twice. If we wanted to. It was an optional thing, but they encouraged us to do it if we had anybody that had any anxiety about our departure and our absence from their lives. Any loved ones that loved us that were worried about us. And so that ended up becoming a difficult, challenging lesson opportunity for all those individuals that were left. And some of them rose to the occasion, and some of them still might. If they ask the next level for help with it and to understand it. And the next level, like Alodi's sister, who I met with Frank, because they were cousins, in Connecticut somewhere. And she felt like he knew what he was doing, and that was the right thing for him to do. Alodi. Cabot was his first name. Of his vehicle. So let's see, I went around Jericho there. Let me get back to the scripture since I got it on the screen there. And I'll get to the chat room in a second. But, not literally, of course. I should get right over there because I said that. Well, the sixth angel is during the time. The sounding is actually the from Salpizo, which is from Pigex. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Which is to trumpet, such as sound a blast, literally or figuratively, which are yet to sound. Oh, yeah, okay. So the sixth angel, which are yet to sound, which means that that's got some future in it, as yet to sound. A trumpet, but from this other word, it's Salpinx is perhaps from Salos 45:35 through the idea of quavering or reverberation. A trumpet, the idea of quavering, and that if you go back to that, it says that it's probably from the base of Cyano 45:25, a vibration, a billow, a wave. Interesting. And then if you take it another step, akin to size, is to wag, as a dog its tail, fawningly. Generally to shake, figuratively disturb and move. To shake. And that's where seismology comes from, an earthquake, right? A shaking, to move. So this reverberation causes movement in the earth. If you want to play out all the sub-definitions, and then it goes down to scio as a verb, to rock, vibrate properly, sideways, or to and fro. Generally to agitate in any direction, cause to tremble, figuratively to throw into a tremor of fear or concern, move, quake, shake. Now, that happened when Tiando came public during the time of the sixth angel sounding. Because during this time, it goes to Revelation 11 and 12. Actually 11, not 12. But 12 is contained within 11, except for the ending of 12, which is similar, is a parallel with the ending of 11, I come to think of it. So they were in sequence together, like two, right? And 12 talks about tea, and Doe said that in a meeting that he held, Revelation. He told us to bring Bibles, and we hadn't, those Bibles were in our library, but we weren't using them because they didn't teach out of the Bible for the first 10 years or so. And not that they ever really taught out of the Bible, but except for this one time where Doe said, bring Bibles, and T didn't come to that meeting, but she was in her vehicle at that time. And so he said, open up to Revelation 12:1, and he said, the woman is T. And he talked about a little bit about that the dragon was Lucifer, and the fallen angels were the ones that were the 10 horns, and no, the 7 heads and 10 horns of the dragon. And then that's described as the beast. So those are the souls, that are the heads and the 10. And then the beast is described as the human kingdom, the ones that are running the human kingdom. So that's the G7, I believe, and the G10. He didn't say all that. All he did was say about the Lucifer and his fallen angel souls, going against him and being the one that was being born to the throne. And T said that she came just to wake him up. No, she came to get him going. And then she was going back. And Doe wondered what that meant for a while. I don't know how long. And because he thought, where is she going back to? He told us. Her vehicle's family? He couldn't imagine that. She had divorced her husband, I think, during that time that they were waking up together. And I'm not exactly sure if it was right before that happened or not. I'm saying she, but I'm talking about the vehicle that T used, which isn't a she. Vehicles don't have gender. You have to overcome that. That's one of the big things to overcome. That's why people that are attracted to the same gender, those said were showing evidence that they had overcome their gender consciousness. But if they haven't overcome their sexual consciousness, then they still have that to overcome in order to get on that spacecraft. All those things would keep us off the spacecraft, and many more. T said that what would keep me off the spacecraft, she told me this in a note, that she gave a bunch of notes to, I think, everybody in the classroom. That's what we were told, I believe. But I could have misunderstood that part of it. The things that would keep us off the spacecraft was that I liked that talking about me as the mind of this vehicle that my soul mind had not overcome yet. So I wasn't riding the horse as well as I could have in order to qualify to become a crew member on a Star Trek crew that is like Star Trek without any human behavior, so no kids running around, and no old people, and no jealousies, no human behaviors, no propagation, no sexuality, no desire for propagation. And everything else. Anyway, so wow, I just went down a whole bunch of different avenues, streets. Egypt means the two streets, and there were two streets. One was T and Doe together. The two were on that street together. And then the second street was when Doe came public through the classmates. The students came public on Doe's behalf, and then he came public on the internet, the midheaven, in Revelation 14. I believe, is referring to. And Egypt, meaning of the word Egypt is the two straits. There might be more than one meaning, I think there are, but that's one of them, and that's the one I looked at. And so in other words, the two straight and narrow paths. And how that was talked about in Revelation 11, how they're shot down in the street. It was the first street that they were shot down in. And then they laid down their vehicles in the second street, where they became the Heaven's Gate group and also Total Overcomers Anonymous before that. And an ALERT, Advanced Life Extension Research Team, when they started dietary research for longevity. So that, because Doe didn't know how long we were going to need to be here after T left. So he wanted our vehicles to be as healthy as they could be. And so that's our instruction now, I believe, to take that example We're not only to follow what he said in his words, we're to follow his examples that he gave. And the example that he gave was to embrace a cleansing diet. That doesn't mean that if you don't do it that there's something wrong with you. It's just not, you don't want to tackle that one yet. That's the bottom line. And I didn't tackle it. I tackled it like a wimp, and I still am a little bit of a wimp with it. When I say wimp, I'm not saying that Doe would have called me a wimp. But, I didn't go all the way with it. And I kept brown rice in my diet, even though I knew it wasn't the Transfiguration diet. When I got Lyme's disease, a crippling Lyme's disease, pain every night where I couldn't get my legs in a position that was comfortable. Maybe I would have got used to it eventually. I didn't take any pain relievers for it. Maybe if I had done that, I would have gotten used to it better. But I went on the diet in a big way, and I started with the cayenne pepper and the apple cider vinegar with the mother in it, and the unfiltered version, so it had a lot of minerals. And then, went on to fruit in the morning, and then vegetables and leafy greens, a lot of vitamin C, and a lot of garlic infused in the olive oil. Where was I now? Wow. I went down a lot of roads there. But, I'm not going to talk about Revelation 11 now because it's in one of my videos if you want to watch it. Listen to it to see what I came up with. And there's always more to come up with. So it is good when I go through it again, but because I always kind of see more. But I'm trying to relate it to the time period that this is, the sounding takes place by the reverberation is the mind coming through the presence of the older members, their vibration, a literal vibration. Those said that spirits were echoes, and that the next level mind is synonymous with the word spirit. And so the Holy Spirit is the echo is the reverberation from the next level's mind. And they said that originally as being light coming from a distant place in the might have said galaxy. I don't know if they said universe. I don't remember that exactly. If Stuart ever listens to these, I hope he would correct me by coming into the chat room or something. Anyway, or if Carlin knows something about what I'm talking about, he might have heard from Ricody. Or Oscody, or maybe Oscody, or Pipody, or Juan Odie, or which I don't know what happened to Juan Odie. He was living in Venezuela last I knew. And they're certainly having big problems over there. He had a cheese factory and he had a pizza place, I think. And now they're having food shortages and inflation. And I think we're going to have that happen here too. So it's a good time to try to situate ourselves with a mind to being in the mountains. That's my opinion. And that's what Jesus said. And Tiendo were, they didn't say specifically for that verse and that interpretation of mountain, but it might just mean, well, it said get out of Judea. Now, where is Judea? It's not just the Middle East, I don't believe, because there's a new Judea, because there's a new Jerusalem. And I believe that new Judea is the United States, but I think it might be the Western United States, mostly, because that's the temple area. And that the courtyard of the temple, I believe, is the eastern part extending to Europe and who knows where, extending east indefinitely through the planet. But you're going to see it in degrees to where the people that weren't in the English-speaking areas end up migrating away from. Maybe that's the reason why they had those big tsunamis and things, and repeatedly. You know, Japan has been faced with, and Indonesia and Sumatra, and are faced with big earthquakes and big typhoons and tsunamis all through the last, hundreds of years. So, people might have tended to migrate west because the next level wanted them to have that exposure to what was being brought to the western areas. Because they said when the light was first coming in the 70s, in a big way, when they actually were taking over their vehicles, that's the biggest way that it happens. Even though they picked the vehicles well before that at birth. So in the 20s, starting for Tiendo, they said, I believe, if I remember correctly, that's an explanation for the Roaring '20s. And the big dust bowl that happened was the big drought that happened. So heat comes with that. And and fire is the way that the records say that the planet will be recycled this time. And you've got Yellowstone that's growing, it's been growing for years. I'm not saying it's growing very fast, it's not very fast. But it's sure evidence that it could blow at any time if the next level wanted it to. So that's eventually going to happen, I believe. And gosh, depending on what other things are happening, because the next level, when they're done, it's going to be very quick. So we're not going to have a long time if those that are remaining, when that happens, they won't have a long time to suffer through that. Not like the way that it's happening with the way that the humans are taking advantage of the virus this time in order to, impose a lockdown with all these bizarre justifications for. All their justifications can be challenged. Even the contagion one, when I heard that Dr. Kaufman said, I actually thought different than him. I thought that it was better to have social distancing. And he said that when in his family we had kids and a partner, sometimes some would get a flu and some others wouldn't. Now, maybe this one was modified by adding proteins to it, so maybe it's more contagious. I don't doubt that's possible. But we do see the same evidence of some healthcare workers aren't getting it, and other ones are. Or they get a mild case. 95% of the ones in the people in Italy were getting no symptoms to mild symptoms. That's a huge percentage to have locked down the whole country. Because what percentage get the flu? Fauci said to the National New England Medical Journal, he wrote that of the doctors that read that it was less dangerous than the flu. I could post these documents, but if you don't know where to find that, ask me and I'll post it somewhere. I should make a page of all the things that I researched. Pretty soon they're gonna say that those things were made up, and they'll scrub them if they are already scrubbing some things. But I think that's the benefit of having people in control of things that don't agree with the other people. On the way they're doing things. And Trump is of the mindset that he doesn't go along with everything the Democrats are saying, and Ralph Nader called the Democrats the liberal intelligentsia. The liberal intelligentsia. That was Ralph Nader. He was pretty insightful. They really think there's something else. They're getting to be more dangerous than the Republican evangelicals. Because it's the evangelicals that are questioning, like Trump did, the use of so many vaccinations for a child very early in life. That, when they don't have an immune system that's built up yet. Yeah, I guess for some it might help them. But what about the ones that, are not getting such a good immune system from their parents? It would end up, making them into what? Giving them the sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS? I don't know. One has to wonder. There have been some links there. That was happening during the time of the polio vaccine. And Bill Gates tested the polio vaccine pretty recently in the 2000s in India. And he had a lot of people that had the reverse reaction of they had major problems from it. I think it might have been an attenuated virus, one that had some kind of artificial thing associated with it, with the virus. For artificial aspect. Now, they make them artificial. That's evidence also of bioengineering. And we know they've been working on bioengineering all kinds of things that they try to do. GMOs is a bioengineering. The vax are bioengineering. and using us as guinea pigs for them. Trying to build a vehicle that can live forever. And trying to grow organs. They have underground tunnels all over the planet. Now, I don't know how abundant they are compared to the United States. I imagine the people, that are pulling money out of their economies all over the planet. When you see new construction, like you can go to Tajikistan, I think, or is that how you say it? And they've got these like huge glass temples, like buildings that seem to be made out of crystal. I'm telling you. And you got to know that they've got underground facilities there, so that if the surface gets disturbed, and you got to know that they picked an area where there wasn't a fault line that they were aware of. But the thing is, they don't necessarily know where all the fault lines are. The next level might be able to make fault lines. They just had an earthquake go off in a place that, in California, I believe it was, that they didn't know was a fault line. Or maybe that was Alaska. Or someplace else in North America. I know it was, I remember it as North America. Just days ago. If you were to draw a curve on the earthquakes that were escalating, it would be going up since 2000, especially, and same with volcanic eruptions. Anyway, I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer, but maybe some of this is new to some people. The thing is to make the best of our time, no matter what, and to not dwell on it. To dwell on the negative, we need to have a war against the negative. But it's positive also to recognize that the next level is spading and about to recycle, because that's coming from our older members' mind. That's what's a positive about it, because that's a lot. It's like Jesus said, take my yoke, take my burden, take the things that I require of you, and it will be easy. It is. It makes it all easier. And people are going to say, well, that's because you're living in the illusion that that's real. And so what, I say? So what to that? Even if it was. Okay? I have the right to build my own illusion. If that's going to make me have some happiness without filling myself with drugs and substances that are bad for my vehicle's health. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with using substances, but there's too much of anything is a bad thing. And it's better to not be too dependent upon things for our happiness. I believe that. I can't say that Doe said that, but I think maybe he did. Well, there was no use of substances like marijuana or alcohol in the classroom. Though after T left, Doe did experiment, or maybe it was the same year that T left. Because we had 2 Christmases. One before T left in December, and one after he left. And then they had one before they left in December of 96. So 85 and 86 we had Christmases. And then and we did singing during all those times. Except I wasn't with them for the last time. Christmas carols. T instigated that. Said that she wanted us to learn to look to Doe better by looking to him as a choral leader. So she gave him instructions to do that task. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wanted to do that because it's what he did in the world. And he didn't want to, bring in that vibration. But T knew that he wouldn't let that vibration pull him back into the world. Whereas for students, that might happen. Like happened to me, in a sense, and R30 in a sense, perhaps, because both of us were musical before we joined. And he played guitar, and I played harmonica and percussion, a little bit of drum set, and a little tiny bit of flute, a little tiny bit of saxophone. Anyway, so when Doe came to us when we were in Astrologics in Amarillo, Texas, which Astrologics was a little business that they started, doing astrology charts. And Christians who have a problem with that are going to have to get over it if they want to continue in this direction. Anyway, but so we were there, and Doe started up the project of music he was thinking about it. At the same time, when we started to sing, I should say he and T were thinking about it, but Doe came to us and talked to me and R30 about it, and asked for notes to tell him what we did with music when we were in the world. And so I wrote a note telling him what I did, and I assume R30 did as well. R30 is Michael in some of the very oldest documentaries. And with Larry King Live, he was Michael. Anyway, as far as I know, he's still in his vehicle. I haven't heard otherwise. So anyway, but then it didn't happen. And I was a little bit let down, but it didn't last long. I mean, it didn't really faze me much. I wasn't like depressed over it. It was like, oh, that would have been fun, but, so what? No big deal. I wasn't attached to, when I first left everything behind, I played flute, and I had two flutes, and I gave one to my partner, Sarah's sister, and the other one I took with me, thinking that maybe I could sell it. I tried to play it once, and I couldn't get. I had nightmares a couple times after I sold it, so I didn't have a flute. And I was trying to get some sound out of it, and I couldn't get any sound out of it. It's like I had no wind for it. And I've experienced that recently, actually. Just the other day when I was trying to play it, and I couldn't get anything out of it. I couldn't play in tune. I just realized what that was. I didn't have enough force in me. If you want to call it lung power, whatever. But, it's like talking takes force. You have to actually spend some energy doing that. Unless you're me and you're just rambling on, right? No, staying on a thread, on a frame of, takes energy. And so it's exhausting. But let's see, where was I? I got too far out. So I'll go to the chat room. I'm not going to try to pull it in again. You all have been talking a lot, holy smokes. I'm going to be on the chat room for the rest of the night. So I'm sorry I haven't been here sooner. Matthew, okay, I was responding to the first thing that Matthias said. Matthias. And then Matthias says, I mean, should we physically get out of this world, kill ourselves, when this new comet arrives? No. No, emphatically no. There was not even a should for them. That wasn't the ticket. Death isn't the ticket. But doing the task the next level gives us is the ticket. And that's to deal with our separation from the world. Show the next level that we want to separate from the world by asking them to help us separate. And part of the separation is going to come by studying everything they said and coming to believe in it, and and putting the doubts aside. If we have doubts, when we have doubts, thinking that the positive would be that we'll come to understand that it was totally true when we see something that we just don't believe yet. And being willing to trust that Tiendo will help us come to understand it. And that's happened to me a lot of times. But, and then believing that they came from the kingdom that created this planet and all its inhabitants was the word I believe they used. And then standing up for Tiendo and maintaining that stand until we lose our vehicles, however that happens. And so there's not a ticket. We need our vehicles to learn lessons through. I'm repeating it in case there's new people that are just coming in here, and I just read that, even though I talked about a lot of this before. Because this is so important. You got to prove to the next level that they will give you permission to lay down your vehicle. One of the worst case scenarios would be that you want to get out of here and you don't want to lay down your vehicle prematurely by taking it upon your own hands, because you want to take advantage of every moment you have, because that's what the lesson step is now. And but you want to get out of here. Okay, so what Doe said about that was that you might find yourself with a firearm. And you should learn how to shoot it. And that since you'll be standing up for Tiendo in the public arena somewhere, as much as you can muster, and since they're hated, they're going to be hated by most people in the mainstream, and so there's a certain amount of separation we're doing whenever we are believing in Tiendo, because the discarnate world and Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls will be allowed to have somewhat of a offense to us. But Tiendo are regulating that, because otherwise they would overcome us. They could overcome us. I shouldn't say will. And so, so when the world, the beast, or whatever, seeks out all the dissidents to where it's more than, just being nice and turning off their website for a little, for a short period of time, or or canceling a video that they have, or censoring them in some way, barring them from being on Facebook for a few days. Knowing that when they find out where we are, and know that we have firearms, that they'll take us out the same way they did to the Branch Davidians, although Doe wasn't saying that he believed in what David Koresh was talking about. He actually wondered at the time whether his students would be as dedicated as David Koresh's students were to him, by being willing to die rather than give in to the lower forces through the human authorities. Wow. Those pictures are so huge in my mind. I'll go back to the chat room. I think anybody that tells you that would there'd be any rightness to that, to leaving their vehicle now, is wrong. I mean, plead with T and O to know that if that was right for you. And but I don't want to know about it if you end up feeling that it is. Because I know the Luciferians would love for people to leave and not get the benefit of connecting with Tiando's information. They would love that, because then they would win over those souls, potentially. Well, I'm not saying that if somebody did that, the next level won't take them. I think the ones that did that with the Jonestown people, I suspect that the next level scooped up all those souls. Because they wouldn't have been willing to do that if the next level wasn't watching over them a little bit, even though they were being led astray. I mean, it was still their choice to stay with him. And he was somewhat of a tyrant, where he was accused of disciplining kids by tying a rope around their legs and holding them upside down in a water well, inside the well, where it was dark and upside down. I don't disbelieve that's possible. Humans have done worse than that. And he showed his colors when he was demanding everybody to leave their vehicles to drink that drug, after they started to see that it wasn't a drill like it had been like 2 or 3 times before that, where there was no poison in the... And that was severely poison. That was like, made them convulse. They were vomiting up mucus. Wow. I wonder if they could do that. Put a little tiny bit of... Wow. Holy smokes. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it, but you must. That was the first book that Tiendo wrote. But if you take something into your body let's say you took a virus into your body that that attacked the lung tissue. You breathed it in, or you got it in an injection. And it just created a chain reaction of the equivalent of cancer. You know, the body immune system trying to fight it like crazy, and as a result of it, inflammation grows, and inflammation is mucus. It means like a thick snot. It can be that dense, and it pours out of the vehicle when somebody has a fever. It's the body trying to get rid of it, because if it stays in there, it's going to suffocate the body. Now, isn't it interesting that the people in Jonestown died of strychnine poisoning? So I just wonder if it's possible that that rumor that that humans were working on attaching proteins to an animal virus to try to get them to jump to humans was a protein that came from a poison like strychnine. I'm just, throwing that out there because of the way that the strychnine reacted in those Jonestown people, and how the COVID virus creates that effect in humans. They might have intentionally wanted to get rid of the old people because they were on their deathbed anyway. That's not anything different than sending a bunch of people to the gas chamber, and those same influences, same discarnates that were in those vehicles, putting that into motion and justifying it, are back. They didn't go anywhere. Same space alien, Luciferian, that sees human vehicles as expendable, and that can even be used for their blood. Well, if the blood isn't totally destroyed by being full of substances from like the blood thinners and wow. We can't say what's not possible. And there's a lot of evidence that there's a lot of room for distrust on everything we're told. If they're telling us to do something, there can be something wrong with it. And that's what I was talking about in the beginning, as a contagion. You can be in the same family, and I did experience that with my family, because I was reminded by Dr. Kaufman of that. That I was in the same family with two daughters, a stepdaughter and a blood daughter, and my partner and myself, and sometimes one would get sick or two would get sick, and maybe someone would get sick later, and then someone would not get sick at all. It didn't happen the same way. Well, why? Because there's different degrees of virus that we get from people. And when we get a virus from somebody else, it's potentially weakened each time a new generation comes along. It has to do with how much of that virus. So that, I mean, if we're kissing them on the lips or something, we're going to get more than if we are just, near them when they sneeze. If we don't wash our hands. T and Do were very conscious of not passing on germs. But they didn't say anything about social distancing, but they said we had to use hot soap and water with all our dishes, and then we put them in a dishwasher so that they would be really sterilized. But before we had the dishwasher, or in times when we didn't have a dishwasher, then they said, we use hot water in a trickle to rinse everything that was washed in the hot soapy water before that, with a final rinse. And we were taught to not touch our toothbrush to the tube of the toothpaste, to the opening. To try and just do a little twist of our wrist to twist it off as we pull away. And we had liquid soap. And this was in the 80s. I think it was the 80s. We had the liquid soap. I could be mistaken on that. It might have been Dr. Bonner's. Anyway, I kind of think it was. I could be wrong about that. But anyway, let me think if there's any other sanitary things that we did. Well, they gave us antihistamines to dry up the mucus that was coming out of us, so that the mucus wasn't coming out and going out to all over the place to get other people infected by it. We already had instructions, I think, not to touch our openings on our body. To use a tissue when we would need to get something out of our nose, and go to the bath chamber to do it, so that we have privacy. Just because it's less crude. That's the way they were thinking about it, not like it was a moral thing or anything. So those are the measures that, to me, are the best measures to use, and because even if you get sick from somebody else, it's going to keep on diminishing, right? So unless you're close to the source, you're going to get a less and less strain, a less and less dose, and probably a milder case. But maybe not for the people that are totally immune suppressant. For them, it might be that, it's an acceleration of their leaving these vehicles. And it's not that I want that to happen to any of them. But if they ask the next level for help, maybe the next level will help them. And maybe they'll have a new lease on life and be able to learn some lessons. Or even learn for the short time that they remain. Maybe they'll be more alert, more able to grow in some ways from that scare. See, we're not the ones that can determine what provides a lesson in the human kingdom. Being on drugs on a ventilator is not easy. I know, I watched it. I saw my stepdad's vehicle on a ventilator in a hospital. Yeah, he was laying in bed and he had two tubes down his throat. Or one of them was helping him breathe, and the other one was he might have had COVID for all I know, because it's been around a long time. It's like it comes originally from the SARS, they say. But maybe this is an adaptation of that. It was changed, so maybe the 19th version is the worst version. So I wouldn't be that surprised if that's true. I'm not I have been kind of downplaying it, but I keep on getting reminded that it might be as bad as they say it is, so that more people are dying. But it's still mostly the people that have one or two or three existing illnesses, like heart disease and lung disease and diabetes and asthma and cancer, AIDS. All right, I'm getting pretty tired. I hardly made a dent in the chat room. Oh no. Jeez. Well, I got to get a little bit further over here with... I'm sorry, folks. I know you all have a lot of questions and comments and things. I'll copy the chat room and I'll make a blog post of your questions and of my responses to them. That's the best I can offer with that, because I'm feeling very tired. I'm trying to stay on a new schedule, because I was much more productive today when I got on a schedule to where I was getting up early in the morning. So I just want to finish this this Revelations part. So I heard the voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. And before actually means in view of, I think, in the face of God. So in the face of God, and the golden altar would be the location where they laid down their lives. And horns has to do with the hair on the head. So the four hairs on the head. Oh, well, related to the four animals that the human kingdom are made up of. That's saying that they are animals. I mean, not animals, but they're mammal vehicles, those four. Well, they were. And that would be maybe akin to the same kind of description of the ones in the Revelation 7 that talk about being the ones that have control over the four winds and that laid down their lives. So that's members of the Tyndos crew. It might be Jan Odie and Liv Odie and Alex Odie, not Alex Odie, but Jan Odie and Liv Odie and Log Odie and June Odie. That would be my guess. But I could be wrong about that. It doesn't matter. But just for the context, they might be individuals that are training to have a job that Doe had, as like Michael the Archangel, the captain of angels, where the angels were the rest of the 34 in that example, or the 38 if you want to count the 4 that came afterwards. That I don't doubt went with Do to where Do went. Whether they stayed there for very long, that's another story. Because if they had more things to overcome, they might have got a different assignment than others. But whatever it was going to be a great assignment to have. I know that. Oh, I see. Maybe I don't need to read the chat room because I've got someone in there saying he's the wrath of cardinals, saying the comet is coming. He put it in capital letters. Don't chicken out again, Sawyer. I didn't chicken out, actually. I was willing to lay down my life. I flunked out because I hadn't done my homework on overcoming my vehicle's addiction to sexuality. So then Booster says, guys, shouldn't a representative be here to instruct us on how to board the spacecraft if this thing really is a spacecraft? It doesn't matter if the comet's a spacecraft or it's bringing a spacecraft. That's irrelevant. The teachings are here from Do. They're available. We don't need somebody on the Earth to take us through the lesson plan. We're in the same lesson plan period as individuals were during Jesus' time after he left. The people that were left behind then are probably the same souls that are back now and have the same kind of experience, but with the updated information. But it could also be many of the people that were with Jesus in that group of 70, or the group of 84 or 82, depending on how you want to count things, because there's the 12 and then the 70, so that's 82. And that's not necessarily counting female vehicles that were students. And there could be as many of those, which would be 164. I mean, it's easier to focus on, the negatives. We got to keep our minds on the positive. Read that. I suggest reading that document that T wrote. It's called The Power of Goodness. The Power of Goodness. If you search on those words, The Power of Goodness, on my blog, you should come up with it. I'll write it down so I don't miss it. Then Jeff says, yeah, Darren. Oh, Darren retracted it. Nobody's going to get on a spacecraft anytime soon without a representative. That's true. You need to have a relationship with that representative. That's why I was saying for the longest time that Doe said in so many ways that you need a present representative in order to take you through that birth canal of leaving your vehicle, to give you permission to do that. Thank you, Jeff, for reminding me of that. And you also have to do the formula of separating from the world and leaving everything behind. So, some people might think they've done that already, and they may have. But then you got to change your behaviors and ways. stop having any forms of sensuality in your head, whether it's anger or sexuality. If you can't get a handle on that, then you're not ready to leave, for sure. Thank you for that, Jeff. Then Booster says, are you sure you've reached a level where you are worthy to ascend to the next level? Darren Haywood? Good point. How could you be sure? Why would you be sure? What's the advantage of just getting into the spirit world? There's people talking about that all the time. That it's better in the spirit world. And yeah, sure it is better in some ways because you don't have a vehicle, but you don't grow in the spirit world. And you're more inclined to be recycled in the spirit world if you haven't grown enough next level mind to where the next level sees that you could be useful to bring back to have an experience in the human kingdom again. Through the different ways that can take place. I don't want to get into those details right now. Audio is fine. I'm finally getting over to that. Thank you. Jonas Trips. Then Booster says, I believe you're making a mistake, Darren. If you fail to ascend, then your soul will surely be replanted in another vehicle to continue your work towards reaching heaven's gate. I'm glad I didn't see what he was saying. We are against suicide because we're not old enough yet. And tell me if you've been pleading to Do to know whether it was right for you. In the heavens, in the distant heavens, not just any old Do. They can masquerade as Do. They do. They've done it a number of times with people. But Do did make a mistake, at least, Bruce was saying, at least once, in which he predicted that a spacecraft would land on Earth and take the classroom aboard with their human vehicles intact. What makes you so confident, Darren? Oh, yeah, there you go. I like you putting that idea out there. Do did say that they made mistakes. He said it was a mistake to use that credit card. But he felt that he had instruction to do it. But I don't think it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake for me, but it did separate the people that were there for the UFO ride. You don't even know Do. Did you even meet Do? Because you have to know that you have to have a personal relationship with Do. If you want me to show you where all it spells out, that's all spelled out, I got to post that on my blog. If you don't want to wait for that, then, I wish you the best. I hope, but can't say that it came from me. If you and Cub Doggy 1981 says message retracted. Okay, and Darren says he retracts his message, and then Cub Doggy says 1981. Yeah, Darren, that was in 1996. Cub Doggy says that was for that was for that particular group at that time. That was simply one instruction by a representative at that particular time. And then Booster says, Cub Doggy is right. That information is available for us so that we can work towards overcoming in this lifetime, so that our souls will be more prepared when we are replanted in the next stage. That's exactly true. And then Cub Doggy says, I never read the book, so I cannot speak if other than what I've heard Sawyer say on his live streams. I think he highly suggests you don't leave your vehicle. He's pretty adamant about that. Yes, I certainly am. Then Booster says, the gates of the kingdom are closed for this era. Best case scenario, what's happening is part of the recycling. Well, I don't believe the gates closed because I don't think Doe closed it, Booster. The last thing he said that it was still open for a brief period of time. Now, I think that brief period of time is up, but I don't know that for a fact because he didn't spell out for how long. So that means that even now that, no matter what we're doing, if let's say we leave because of an accident or whatever, potentially the next level will save our spirit or soul into its next most appropriate step, to be brought back to have another experience in the human kingdom, to further overcome the world or even graduate at that time. And then Booster says, this is going to be interesting. And Cub Doggy says, Sawyer, what is your take on the virus? Sorry, I missed many of your recent live streams. I've been going through the stuff that's not of the next level. Relationships. I don't know if I can go through all that right now, Booster. I'm sorry. Well, I just think overall the government is taking advantage of a virus that might be more contagious than the flu virus that they might have created. I don't know. I don't think they're going to let go of the control they get. They've got us prepared for it anyway, so that they can bring it on again, even if we get back to a reasonable normal. And then why are you retracting your comments at Darren Haywood? And then Steak and Egg says, good evening, Sawyer. Good evening to you. And Cub Doggy says, I was near Waco at the time that happened as a 11 or 12-year-old kid. Had really no clue what it was about back in those days. That's been one of those theories early on, was that this was meant to get rid of the baby boomers. I don't buy it. Personally, I don't really think that this virus was meant to be used as warfare or a continued cleansing. Maybe Mother Nature cleansing. I don't doubt that. I don't know. I'm just thinking that the virus is from our overpopulation, the wet markets, our own factories here in America, etc. Our population creates. True. I've always been holding my overpopulation theory through the years. I always said we were due for a plague. just by nature. I don't know if it'll be our demise in the end or not. Who knows? I've been working through the whole thing, Sawyer. The steel mills are finally taking a hit. We've had one death from COVID so far. About 2 or 3 cases total that we know of. The death case had health issues. Then laughing out loud, okay, says Sawyer, I love you so much. And then it says, okay, Sawyer. All right, so I'm not one of those lovey-dovey types, so, but I do love people that love next level. I love the next level in them. That's the next level of love. And I love them for actually, filling their vehicle with the next level of mind. But it's a friendly love. Like Jesus was talking about, loving your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so what do you think, all? I'm thinking I want to. Yeah, I gotta turn in to a pumpkin very soon. So Booster says, I was speaking beyond my comprehension. I was just trying to talk Darren out of suicide. Good for you. That's fine. No, you were doing perfectly well there. I mean, as far as I know, I didn't find any fault with what you were saying. I hope it meant something to Darren. If Darren wanted to do so because of believing in Tiendo, then that's all the more reason that we need help talking to people about Tiendo. There's not that many people that are going to do it. It doesn't have to be either. All right, folks. I think an amazing kind of opportunity to have again. So I'm going to turn in. Good night.